Hello and welcome back to Salute Your Sports. Got a fun show for you guys today. Kamen Entchev here with the bracket master, Tom Casselman. He had UConn and Purdue in the championship. I guess it's really not that genius of a pick in retrospect, but I mean, you had it. No one else in our bracket had both, with UConn winning. Both of us had UConn winning. You finished just slightly ahead of the bracket because I did not have Purdue in the championship game. It was a awesome men's tournament, awesome women's tournament. We'll be talking about legacies. Caitlin Clark on the ladies' side, Zach Edey on the men's side. You know, where do they belong on the pantheon of college greats? You know, where do UConn and South Carolina belong on the pantheon of great college teams all time? Because both of them had historic runs. UConn with the best point differential in tournament history on the men's side. South Carolina undefeated, wins the championship, 10th team ever do that. It was kind of like a very similar deal, I think, in both games, where you had the best college player going up against the best overall college team. And as it often is the case, team tends to prevail over individual in team sports. We'll talk a lot about the NBA as well. Oh my God, what a mess the play-in tournament picture is. We know what teams are going to be in either the playoffs or the play-in tournament, but we don't know which ones are going to be in which specific one. You know, for me as a Curry and LeBron fan, as you know, Tom, I'm holding out hope that there's a way for them both to make the playoffs. It is possible, not likely, but possible that they both make it, depending on, you know, tiebreakers and last few results. I know they're both in the play-in tournament, but they could move up in seeding. Still mathematically possible. If one of them moves up to the 8th seed, then the other one stays at 9 or 10. There is a little bit of hope, Tom, for me. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe I am saying it's going to happen. Maybe I'm going to wish it into existence, as we say. It is Masters Week for the golf fans. You know, we've got our picks. You know who I'm going to pick. I know who you're going to pick, our adopted golfers. But since we don't talk golf all that often on this program, maybe the people listening don't know who we're going to pick. So we'll have that coming up as well. Looking forward to an awesome show, Tom. Cannot wait to get started.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be. There's so much stuff to get into. Didn't even mention for what's in the rundown. We got to talk Coach Cal and kind of the landscape of college coaching on the men's side. But
that's in there.
We will start with a couple of championship teams. And let's go chronologically on this one. Let's start with the women's game that was on this past Sunday.
There was more people who watched the women's game than the men's championship for the first time in tournament history.
Yeah,
so we've been leading with the men the whole tournament. Why don't we flip it? Ladies first this time around, right?
Yeah, and it's really interesting to look at the parallels between these two teams because, as you mentioned, we have two historic championship teams where on the women's side, I believe they are the 10th team to go undefeated throughout an entire season. On the men's side, we have our first repeat champion since the 06-07 Florida Gators went back-to-back championships. And the interesting thing with both of these squads is that they kind of had a similar pathway to winning championships in that with the South Carolina Gamecocks, they lost pretty much every single starter from their program last year, a team that lost to Iowa in the Final Four. So they had all new starters. They had some new transfers coming in. They go out, have this incredible undefeated season, supposed to be a rebuilding year. Although, if we're being quite honest, I think that we can look at Dawn Staley and her resume and say she's not really rebuilding at any point in time.
No.
She is a powerhouse coach for that program. And then on the men's side, of course, a couple of guys going to the NBA. And you saw a lot of, on both teams, role players from last season stepping into bigger roles this season, some transfers coming in and helping out. But with that South Carolina game, we'll get into a little bit of a breakdown there where Iowa jumped out to a pretty significant lead. 10-0 start, 20-9. Caitlin Clark was phenomenal in the first quarter. But then something changed. Carolina, I think, kept their cool throughout the entire game. And there was a little bit of an adjustment. I don't know exactly when the switch was made. But at some point, Dawn Staley switched the Caitlin Clark coverage from Bree Hall to Raven Johnson. And I don't know if it was exactly first quarter to the rest of the game, but we saw Caitlin Clark started out 18 points in the first quarter, just absolutely unconscious from all parts of the floor to, quote, just 12 points the rest of the way. But I think the key was 5 of 20 shooting, 4 turnovers. So it seemed like South Carolina took that first shot from Iowa, made some adjustments. Kamen, what do you think were some of the big key standouts for South Carolina in their victory over Iowa?
Yeah, I mean, I think the defensive adjustment on Clark was important. I think it definitely helped. I think, though, at the same time, though, she's used to hitting crazy off balance step back threes. We've seen her do it many times against good defenders. Simply put, she stopped making her shots, and in particular, so did the team from outside. Iowa threes early. She started 3 of 4 early. They started 5 of 7 as a team. Then the 9 for 23, aka she was 5 of 13, aka 2 of her last 9. So, I mean, they started off unconscious from 3, and then they started bricking like crazy. So, as we always say, live and die by the 3. That kind of hurt the Hawkeyes. And, they got a couple good girls down low. Hannah Stokey is good, but not against Cardoso in South Carolina. I mean, my girlfriend was watching the game with me, and she's like, why are they, a lot of times you're taught to go to the paint to get the easy baskets there, but she's like, why are they going up against that big girl, Cardoso, who, by the way, is mock drafted at number 3 in the WNBA to Chicago Sky, by the way, Tom.
I don't dislike that. I like that a lot.
So it just, they stopped knocking down threes, and then a lot of times you'll hear me say when the threes aren't falling, you go to the bucket, but honestly, not against South Carolina, not against that team, not against that height. I think, Caitlin Clark was uncomfortable, but I mean, she lit up South Carolina last year for 40 points in the Final Four, 40, whatever it was, roughly. I think it was something like that, 40 or 41. It was a crazy game she had last year against them. So, I mean, I think we saw that Caitlin Clark is human. I think there was really good defense against her, but I think she's faced really good defense before and responded better. She just didn't have it the last 3 quarters. And it was pretty obvious that South Carolina had a better overall team. I mean, it was the freshmen. They had a freshman come off the bench. Score was at 17, 19 points. Lit it up from
Johnson,
outside.
yeah.
Tessa Johnson was massive. And it was kind of one of those deals where, a lot of times early on, South Carolina got behind and Dawn Staley went to the bench. You don't really see a team being able to do that where their bench unit is almost as good as their first unit. So I know a lot of people have made a big deal about it. They had 5 new starters. Well, clearly these 5 starters were probably like, if last year's seniors were there, these 5 starters were here. And you lose almost nothing, of a drop-off. Whereas, Caitlin Clark, I think Iowa had like 3 or 4 girls play almost the entire game or the entire game. So as the game went on, Iowa got tired. South Carolina had the fresh legs. They had, simply put, a lot more good players in the game. And the only way Iowa was going to win that game is if Caitlin Clark played her A game. Now, Tom, we've seen her play her A game many times. This is a matchup where I truly feel if they play this game 100 times, Iowa might win 40, because when Caitlin Clark is on, you have no chance to stop her. Even with the really good defense, maybe you double team, but her teammates do make open shots oftentimes from the outside. So I don't want to blame Caitlin Clark because she's such a great player. But, I mean, I think Hannah Stokey is a really good player. I think against most teams, she's that number 2 that everybody sleeps on. Not against South Carolina. It's not a good matchup for her. In a game against South Carolina, they need Caitlin Clark's 8+ game to have any chance. And that's why they were winning in the first quarter. They had that. They were winning. She was balling. And then the shot stopped going in, and the rest was history. There's so much balance for South Carolina. They were the better team. That much was clear. But it wasn't like, I know it ended up being a 12-point margin or something like that, but it was like a 6-point game with like 3 to 4 minutes to go there at the end. So Iowa was right there. If Clark makes a couple more shots, the game could go differently. And in a rare situation with her, she didn't make the shots she normally makes in those scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a great overall game plan and adjustment by South Carolina. Again, the composure that they had where instead of calling timeouts. Dawn Staley's just looking at her squad, just saying, you know what you need to do. And like, yeah, like you mentioned, I think it was 30 something points, like
Oh, the bench
37
points
points, yeah, to zero
to
for South
0.
Carolina.
Depth.
Basically, it kind of feels like they have two starting lineups on their team, and it's really
It's
difficult
like
to win a
hockey.
game. Yeah, it's incredible how they're able to kind of line change like that. And then, of course, Camila Cardoso with an amazing double double, getting all of these offensive rebounds, just really being a presence where, uh, in order to beat South Carolina, you have to be able to make sure they're not shooting the three well. Cardoso kind of negates that with her offensive rebounding ability, just sheer size, because I think she's got like a solid couple inches on anybody that Iowa
On
was putting
anybody.
out there. So
Hmm.
that was just a really, really good overall game, and really a testament to just because it starts a certain way at the beginning of the game doesn't mean you can't make a couple adjustments here or there and ultimately win out as the game goes on. And essentially by the end, like Iowa just seemed kind of really worn down. I think that's why the margin went from that like 6 to 12 points at the end, is that Iowa put in 100% of everything that they had for that game. And it
50,
just wasn't enough.
51 to 29 on the rebounding for the game.
Wow,
51 to 29, Tom.
that's an incredible
And
number. It's hard to
I
win
meant,
when you're not closing out possessions on the defensive boards, and then conversely when you're getting extra possessions through your rebounding. That's a
yeah,
really, really strong way to
I
win.
Iowa had 3 players who played 40 minutes. South Carolina had 2 players who played more than 30. So, I
Hmm.
mean, it was just spread around, no doubt about that. 0 bench points for Iowa, like we mentioned. It was just too much, too many people, too many pieces for
Hmm.
South Carolina. They were just too good.
Yeah. Well, that puts a cap on a really entertaining series. Like you said, the viewership for this game, or the viewership really for the Final Four as well, on Friday nights. Friday nights typically a really difficult draw in terms of getting eyeballs, but you put these games on ESPN, you put the championship game on a nice little matinee 2 o'clock start time. I know some folks were like, "Oh, well, this game should be in prime time." Personally, I feel like Sunday early to mid afternoon is a great start time for a sporting event, because you can get whatever you need done. If you want to take a little nap, great. And then you still have enough time in the evening to get over the Sunday scaries for the week that's about to face you. But I thought it was in a really, really good spot. The men's game could take a little bit of a note. I think that for us Central Time, 8:20 on a Monday night, of course, that means East Coast, it's 9:20. You could move that up a little bit.
It was good for
And
me because I got off there early that night and I got to watch the end of the game
sure,
while I was at work. But for most, maybe not as good.
for most, yeah, not as much. I was having a conversation with Jenna about it'd be kind of interesting to do a men's women's double feature for the championship, but I couldn't really make it work out in terms of like doing a Final Four followed by the championship, unless you make it literally an entire week later, which I don't necessarily know that the college basketball teams would like to do. But I think that'd actually be a really, really fun way. They already fairly recently moved the women's tournament from February into March, because it's like, hey, everybody's in a bracket mood. We're going to get double eyeballs on everything. I don't
Sure.
know. I think that could be a really compelling idea, but that's more
Interesting.
big picture talk there. Speaking of big picture, this Carolina team and their accomplishments. I mean, if we want to start talking about like all time, I mean, I think 38-0 with a championship. It definitely puts you up there in that pantheon with a lot of UConn teams, some Tennessee squads from the 90s, that this is kind of like the new iteration of a powerhouse, which interestingly enough is coming at a time where there's still a couple of the old powerhouses around as well. Of course, UConn in the Final Four. Stanford is always a really, really strong program. So, Kamen, I know we're going to approach the same conversation, but with different kind of viewpoints just on how we kind of frame the whole like greatness aspect of things. I think
Sure.
without question, this is one of the all-time great teams, just for going 38-0. But especially when you consider no returning starters and making those adjustments, and again, what was supposed to be a rebuilding year, this has to be one of the all-time great squads.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's 10 that have been undefeated and won the whole thing. So, I mean, they're automatically have to be in the top 10. I read an ESPN article about it that was ranking the top 10 undefeated teams, and they actually put them at number 9, which,
Mm.
I didn't watch some of the teams in the 90s. I watched a lot of the UConn teams that were on that list for the 2000s. And it's just, it's different. I don't know
Hmm.
the way to put it. Like, it's a different sort of dominance. They don't like Cardoso was a really good player. I mean, she's really tall. She's a great rebounder, but she's not necessarily putting up 20 points. That's not what she does because there's so much balance and depth. She is still an all-time great player, but is she as good as Tana Taurasi, Candace Parker, Sue
Brandon
Bird,
Stewart, Maya
Brandon
Moore,
Stewart,
yeah.
Maya Moore? Is she at their level? No, she's not. It's pretty obvious. So it just depends on how you define team. If we're talking
Hmm.
about sheer stars, they're got to be near the bottom of that list. If we're talking about sheer depth, they got to be near the top because they have, their 6th through 10th best players are considerably better than the 6th through 10th best players on any of those other teams. Obviously, comparing errors is hard. I do put them somewhere near the bottom of that 10, though. I do
Mm.
feel like some of those UConn teams, had they played those teams, they might lose, but it is really hard to know until we see the matchups. So I can't really say, they're way worse or way better than any of the teams that were, undefeated and won the whole thing. I know they've lost 2 games the last, or 1 game the last 2 years.
Hmm.
So they're definitely in that conversation for me. I know you see, you're Mr. Team. You jumped the
Hmm.
gun. I had Iowa, but I want to talk about Caitlin Clark. You want to talk about South Carolina, which is fine, Tom. I'll let you have it. I know a lot of folks will say that they're the bigger story. I think Caitlin Clark to me is a much bigger story personally,
Mm.
but I'll let you hit on your South Carolina talk just because we've seen this 10 times. We've never seen a player like Caitlin Clark. We'll get to that in a second. Where do you put South Carolina on the
Well,
pantheon of women's teams?
I would say that we haven't necessarily seen this before as far as the context for the South Carolina team, because when we talk about those UConn powerhouses winning 90 something games in a row, multiple undefeated seasons in a row, and this is going to kind of bear out a little bit with the whole Caitlin Clark greatness conversation as well. I kind of equate that era to like the 1960s Boston Celtics type of thing, a point where women's basketball at this point is smaller as far as the footprint goes from men's basketball. And so what we saw from the 90s and early aughts is a lot of powerhouse teams that attracted all of the best talent, had all the best coaches, and you had multiple WNBA stars staying 3 4 years because that's just how women's basketball operates. There aren't rules in place for a one and done type of scenario, and there still aren't. But what we saw South Carolina do with a team that absolutely does have WNBA talent, but like you said, maybe not necessarily superstar WNBA talent. When we're looking at a team that um, replaced all 5 starters and had this season in an era where the talent for women's basketball is more spread out. The tide is rising for all boats in the women's side of the game. I think that this is just a completely different level of impressive that we've seen. If you want to have the conversation about what's the greatest team, whatever, there's different criteria. Certainly, UConn, Tennessee has had teams that have had more star power, better overall players. But I think this is an incredibly impressive accomplishment for South Carolina, uh, achieving what they did in this kind of new era of women's basketball. And it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of reload a little bit heading into next season. The future looks pretty bright. I mean, you have Tessa Thompson, Tessa Johnson, a freshman who put up a career game in the championship. You've got a lot of good players that are still going to be in South Carolina. I just think it's different from some of those other teams, those older era teams, simply because of how the women's game is changing. So,
I think
uh,
it's weird in that the talent is more spread out, but
mhm.
whereas used to be like UConn had more of the talent themselves or Tennessee before that. But that's where it's kind of like tricky because I think there's more good teams, but there's not necessarily more great teams in women's college basketball, in my opinion. So I think to go undefeated actually isn't harder. I think
Mm.
it's some ways it's about the same because it evens out because there would be 1 or 2 great teams. I think we're looking at the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth best teams are better than the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth best. I don't necessarily think that the 1 and 2 are necessarily that much better. I think it's just a little bit more
It's a
star
harder
power
road,
is
yeah.
spread out. But I think I think that, you know, even with all these stars, the women's game is much different than the men's game in that it is extremely top heavy. We see so few upsets, and, you know, teams have gotten better, but it's like 3 or 4 teams have entered the picture that weren't before. We're still not seeing an 11 seed like NC State. No, they're never going to make the Final Four, at least not yet. Maybe later on, but
Yeah, no,
the way
I
the
think,
women's game is now, we
yeah.
still see the 1s, the 2s. I mean, I filled out a women's bracket. You did as well. You know, what did we do? We picked chalk, and our picks were really good based on picking chalk. That's just
Well,
how the
I guess
women's game works.
a better comparison as far as contrasting women's and men's game is look at UCLA and what they were able to do again in an era where you don't have one and done talent, where you have arguably greatest player of all time in Lou Alcindor, now known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think that what we're seeing is kind of a shift in the women's game where it's going to start going on that similar trajectory where, you know, what increases the talent? Well, it's more girls playing basketball. It's more girls watching Lisa Leslie back in the 90s, and then, you know, Brandon Stewart and Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, and then, you know, Maya Moore, and then coming now to this level of the game with Caitlin Clark, we're going to start seeing more and more girls playing basketball, which means we're going to have more and more talent going into the WNBA or into the women's NCAA, followed by
yeah,
WNBA.
I mean, look,
so I think we're at a point that's on the uptick.
For the biggest games, the women definitely have that draw, and it's shown. If you have a superstar, people will follow. You know, with that said, you know, I've covered women's college sports, you know, SEC. I've covered, you know, the Sun Belt, and the attendances are not there. And until the attendances and until the programs put the same amount of money into the women's programs, the depth of those other smaller programs won't be. Now, UConn, you know, South Carolina, these programs will be just as big as the men's programs. They'll be just as watched as the men's programs. But a lot of those other schools, if you don't have that superstar, it's going to be very, very tough to, you know, have that draw. Now, you come to the 25th best college women's basketball team in the country, they're not going to have the following that Caitlin Clark has, at least not yet. Now, that might grow, that might change.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely find out. But let's talk about Caitlin Clark. And real quick, before I forget, because it's on the tip of my tongue, and I don't want to forget, because I'm going to get very passionate about Caitlin Clark. Now, one other thing we didn't mention that I did want to mention on our show, speaking of women's basketball, Tara Vanderveer, who is actually the all-time winningest coach, is retiring after an iconic career at Stanford. She actually has 4 more wins than Gino Auriemma, I believe it is. He'll pass her up probably this next season. But at the moment of retirement, she's got the most all-time wins in college women's history. And whenever we talk about the best coaches ever, I mean, the only college coach, no college coach has more wins than her. She has more than Coach K. You know, she doesn't have the same national titles that, you know, some of these other coaches do, but the sustained success at Stanford for her is absolutely iconic. So shout out to another pioneer, another awesome name in women's sports. But I'm going to get into the Caitlin Clark thing because I don't want to use up all that I'm going to say for my statement, because I do have a statement of the week that revolves around her. It revolves around, you know, the lack of respect from her fellow women's basketball players. And just in general, the legends across all sports need to do a better job of respecting the current players, Tom, because the games grow. No matter how much people want to be stuck in saying, my era was better, my players were better. Like, we see this all the time with the NBA. Like, oh my God, 90s basketball was better. You know, guys were more tough. I think, you know, the rules are called differently. You know, everything is different, but like, if we lined up the players today versus back then, the players today would win because guys are more athletic, they're better shooters, and that's not because those guys back then weren't great. It's just the evolution of time. Every single sport, every single athlete will grow. You know, you give those old legends the modern rules, the modern system, the modern skill set, a lot of those guys would learn it too. But over time, the game grows in every sport. We don't go backwards, we go forwards. And I think, if you go, I'm really upset personally at Lynette Woodward. She is just, infuriating me. I think I just butchered her name, and I don't even feel like I have to correct it because what she said, I don't know if you heard what she said, Tom. It was disgraceful. I mean, honestly, instead of, Iowa celebrated her, it brought her at, Caitlin Clark's scoring record. She was the previous scoring champion in women's history. And then, on the weekend of the Final Four, she goes to a banquet and says, I'm still the leading scorer. I didn't have to, I played with the men's ball. I didn't have a 3-point line. It's just like Cheryl Swoops, one of the all-time great women's players, has been on record saying Caitlin Clark broke the record because she had the COVID year. She played 5 years. I'm like, girl, check your stats. She played 4 years. She could come back next year if she wants to. She won't. Diana Taurasi. I mean, come on. Paige Beckers is great. Clark is better. Taurasi's just her take of, I'll take Beckers first. Just her general disrespect on her broadcast towards Caitlin Clark really, really infuriates me. I think that, this is the chance for the women's game to grow. And instead of these ladies, lifting up this great player that Caitlin Clark is, they're trying to tear her down, which, it's one step forward, one step back, Tom. And I think a lot of society is trying to do that. When you become really good, people either love you or they want to tear you down. It's a mix of both. I think there's a lot of let's tear Caitlin Clark down. Is she perfect? No, nobody is. Michael Jordan had a 5 for 25 game in the finals. Just because she didn't play well in the championship game for the last 3 quarters doesn't mean she's not a great player. She has turnovers. Yeah, she has a weakness like everybody else does, but she is a phenomenal player. She is without question, I will say this, without question, the greatest women's college basketball player of all time. There's really zero debate to be had. She's got the most points ever. She's got the most points in the tournament. She's got the most assists in the history of the tournament. She's got the most threes in the history of the tournament. She's still been relatively efficient. I mean, to shoot as many shots as she does, and we're looking at 46, 47%, 38, 39% on threes, 86% from the free throw line. I mean, she is just absolutely the greatest women's college basketball player. And, I will say this, Dawn Staley did a good job at the end. Even if she doesn't believe Caitlin Clark is the GOAT, she said one of the GOATs, which, leaves it ambiguous. Is she the GOAT? Is she one of the top 2 or 3? Is she one of the top 4? Answer it that way. Thank you, Caitlin Clark, for what you've done for the game of women's basketball. You are one of our GOATs. The people that are going against her, their whole thing is she's not the GOAT. Well, if you don't want to call her the GOAT, call her one of the GOATs, one of the greatest. You cannot influence the impact she had. I get why Diana Taurasi is jealous because, in her mind, she was doing a lot of great things as well, and she wasn't as recognized for it. But that is not the way to lead. That is not the way to be mature. And I'm personally very disappointed in Diana Taurasi because she is the all-time women's scorer in the WNBA, an athlete that I personally grew up loving, Tom. That was my first exposure to women's basketball. And I think she needs to check herself at the door because she is setting a horrible example for girls out there. My level of respect for her was up here, and now it's down here, Tom. I've eliminated her from my favorite athletes list because I think she's disgraceful personally with her take on Caitlin Clark. And she is doing a lot more harm than good. She can go check her all she wants, hit her hard in the game. But Caitlin Clark is an all-time great college player. She's done things that no other college player ever has done. And I would love to see these players acknowledge her and call her the best college player ever. Is she going to be the best WNBA player ever? I think so. Maybe she won't be. Maybe she's smaller. That remains to be seen. But you cannot discredit what she did to college. Brianna Stewart also, by the way, another person that I can't stand. Brianna Stewart, also full of jealousy. She claims that that Caitlin Clark can't be the GOAT without a championship. Are you kidding me, Stewart? You had all the best players around you. If Caitlin Clark played for UConn with the same teammates you had, she would have 4 national championships. And this goes across all legends. I mean, you know how much I like Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley's all-time list, Tom, disgraceful. I mean, he puts LeBron at like 7, 8, 9. Everybody wants to talk about their era, their time, and it really bothers me. That's basically my statement, but I can't like not get it out of my head. And this, I don't want to make this just a woman's thing because there are a
Mhm.
lot of the men do the same thing too. I don't want to make this a gender thing because in general, everybody is like, I'm the best, I'm the best. Look, I'm not the most humble guy myself. I can learn from these people too, but be like Leo Messi. You know what he says when they bring up the GOAT discussion? He says, I'm just honored to be considered. I'll let you guys decide that. Thank you so much. I don't hear him dragging down anybody, even Ronaldo, who's his biggest rival, guy that he's clearly better than. You can go about not hurting others. Same thing we see in the Jordan LeBron debate. You know, all the Jordan fans, all the LeBron fans, they want to tear down the other guy when you could focus on what your guy did. So Caitlin Clark, Tom, absolutely the best women's player ever. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. I mean, somebody that leads the nation in points and assists. Do you realize how hard that is to do? I mean, she's scoring 30 points and getting 9 assists, and she's getting like 7 rebounds still.
Mhm.
She's a walking triple double. I don't even know how she gets that many rebounds with the size she's at. So 100% Caitlin Clark is the best women's player. You know, all the other all-time greats can try to tear her down all they want, but it's not going to change. She is the best college basketball player ever, and she has done more for women's college basketball and women's basketball in general than Diana Taurasi has ever done in her whole life. Even with her great
Mhm.
WNBA career, the viewership now, Tom, is so much higher. It used to be like not even close, and this is mainly because of her. I don't want to take anything away from Paige Beckers. I don't want to take anything away from all the other great players, but they're gravitating towards Caitlin Clark. Look at the other national semifinal ratings and look at her national semifinal ratings. These ratings are almost entirely because of her star power, not because of the other great players. I get that's unfair, but
Mhm.
the women's college basketball next year, they're not going to see these record numbers, and that's because Caitlin Clark won't be there, Tom. Until there's another Caitlin Clark out there, they'll never see these numbers ever again. These are directly because of her. They're not because of South Carolina and their team. Because you look at South Carolina's Final Four game against not against Caitlin Clark, nobody was watching that game at the same level, Tom.
Well, I mean, it's a confluence of events, and I'm not saying it's right in condoning what a lot of these current WNBA players and former professional players are saying, but I do understand it as a human reaction because
But be
it's really
better.
easy.
You
It
need to be better, especially in that the side of
well, it's
like you want to grow your game. You have somebody that's growing your game, and you're
this grows the
hurting your own
game.
game.
We're talking about it like this. So there's like a couple different directions that I want to take this entire conversation. One is that absolutely you need to have a star in order to grow a game. I think it's also fair to point out that we are at a confluence of events as far as the actual investment in the women's game, not just from a television perspective, but from a social media perspective. Let's keep in mind that when a lot of these players who are speaking were playing at the college level, were early in their WNBA career, you couldn't find them on any sort of television programming. You couldn't find them on any sort of social media because, in large part, social media just did not exist. I think that there are a lot of players who feel like there is a giant wave of new fans coming to the game, and speaking very highly of Caitlin Clark, as they are right to do, because she is an all-time great, phenomenal basketball player. But I think a lot of these women are saying, "Hey, we've been doing this
Not as
for a
good though.
long time."
Dana
Debatable,
Taurasi was getting 15 points a game at
debatable.
UConn. Caitlin Clark's getting 30
There's
a game. It
how
is
many
vastly
points
different.
would Caitlin Clark got if she were on a team that had, like a South Carolina level of talent? Like there's also usage to take into account here, and there's opportunity as far as, okay, if you are the big superstar player with a solid supporting cast as Iowa has had, that's going to yield a different sort of basketball team than if she had, say, played on South Carolina, or if she were alongside Paige Beckers in UConn. Would she be setting all of these records? I would say probably not, not because she's not talented, but because the opportunity is simply different. And so I think that's kind of what the women in the NBA are feeling, what the athletes are feeling is we've been playing at a super high level for a long time. We're not brand new. You're just now coming to this and not really, maybe they're not feeling as acknowledged for the steps that they have made in growing the game to this point. So I'm saying I understand that as a human reaction.
But that's not mature,
The other
Tom.
thing,
Real quick.
no,
I don't
well,
want to
it's
cut you
not, but
off,
it's
but real
human.
quick. I just looked it up on my phone. If you saw me looking down,
Mhm.
so obviously the women's game as a whole has grown. I agree with that, Tom. And she's not the only reason, but the other national semifinal viewers was 7.2 million. Hers national semifinal was 14.2 million. So
Mhm.
almost double the folks were watching the same Final Four stage game, the one with Caitlin Clark versus the one without Caitlin Clark. Just to clarify,
Yeah.
Tom.
Well, yeah, but I'm
So
saying, like, again, like that is in large part because of the era and the environment that we are in, social media wise, is that she has such a huge following, because of the talent, but also because of the medium, that more and more people can consume her
yes and
ability
no.
than
The
at any
women's
other point in
tournament has
time.
been on ESPN for many years now. It has been on ESPN for many years now. And I think it took that transformative star to take it to the next level, I think, Tom. It has been on
Sure.
ESPN for many
Yeah,
years now.
yeah, I
It's
know, but
not
that's what I said.
new.
Like, it takes the confluence of events. I think on the other side of things, where you're saying that this isn't growing the game, I actually disagree. I actually think that this is laying the groundwork for a lot of potential rivalries, because what do we see every time that there is a great player that comes along, a great team that comes along? They get everybody else's best shot. I mean, these are professional athletes. They always put in a really, really high effort. There's a little extra something, though. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
we're
the
already
girls will
looking at
go
how
after
many
in the
games.
WNBA.
Yeah, it's like
And
so when you're saying that this isn't that this sort of trash talk, this sort of dismissive poo pooing,
it's
I
not
think
trash
it's
talk, it's
actually
the lack of
it's,
respect, Tom.
I think it's trash talk. I think that it's growing the game
I think
with this because
how many
more people are
national
going to tune
titles
in
does
now.
Iowa women's basketball have in their career? History of Iowa women's basketball program. How many titles do they have? Do you know?
Probably none.
Zero. They have zero
Yeah.
national titles. So, like Brianna Stewart saying, I agree with you about the usage. Would she have
Hmm.
as many points if Becker's was there? Probably not. Would she be the best player in the country still? Yes, I think so. But I think we're talking about, winning. Well, she took Iowa to another place they haven't been before. So,
Hmm.
like Brianna Stewart, it's like, how do you expect to win a national title at that program when they've never won before? So how like you know what I'm saying? Like I don't
I
believe
mean,
that you have to have a national championship to be the GOAT of a college sport, which is a one game scenario. I can kind of buy that a little bit more in the
mhm.
NBA where it's a 7 game scenario. You have so many years to play. You have 15, 20 years, but it's essentially 4 years, single game elimination, and you're playing for a program that, albeit was growing. She did come there at the right time. The
Mhm.
program was already growing.
Yeah, you
Got
don't make
another
two
great
Final
score.
Fours, two championship games just because of one player. Like, there's still a
But
lot of
they,
talent in Iowa.
well, yeah, they wouldn't have made it without her though. She's not
Yeah.
the only reason, but
Hmm.
she pushed them over the top, getting them to a place
Yeah.
that they've never been to before. I'm just saying, like, it's different to win national titles at UConn versus Iowa. So Brianna Stewart had it considerably easier. So her 4 national titles to Caitlin Clark's 0 means nothing to me, Tom, if we're talking about the all-time
I
greats of
mean,
women's
there's
basketball.
there's two different components, and I'm really not a fan of the whole you can't have an opinion if you haven't played. But there is something to having accomplished that sort of thing and being asked your opinion and giving that honestly. Can disagree with it. I don't
It's a
personally
team
find that to
game.
be a disrespectful thing to say
What's going to happen
outright.
next year when Caitlin Clark leaves Iowa? They're going to have a good season. They'll make the Sweet 16, maybe, and
Mhm.
then we're not going to hear about Iowa unless they get another megastar if they get lucky. It's as simple as that,
Which,
Tom.
I mean, they could, but what I'm saying is that this is planting the seeds for different rivalries. Like, I don't think it's a confirmed quote, but remember, LeBron James coming into the league, it's rumored that Ricky Davis said LeBron James is joining my team. There is definitely very much a sense of you can be phenomenal at this level. You can be phenomenal against, like for LeBron James against high school players, for Caitlin Clark against college players. Let's see you go up against people who have been doing this professionally. for a lot of years, have a lot more experience, are honestly just physically more developed. Because you have more time for working out, for being in the weight room. Your body's just more developed as you get into your mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s type of thing. So I think
And
I don't
let's
interpret
see
this
you
as
acknowledge your
disrespect. I think
college
this is
greatness, and then
building up the next
all right,
game.
well, they'll see what happens when they play her when she shows them how it's done in WNBA. We'll see what
Yeah,
happens when they play her.
I mean, aren't the Indiana Fever like 36 of their games are being put on prime time or something
As
like
well they
that?
should be.
I
As
mean,
well they should be.
that's and no small part because a lot of folks are going to tune in not just to see Caitlin Clark and how talented she is, but also to see you know what the league's going to do, what sort of adjustments they're going to try to make. Because I do think there probably will be an adjustment period. I don't anticipate her coming in and setting the world on fire right away, um, but I think she absolutely will like take that adjustment, make the
I
adjustment.
think it's the other way because I think the all-time greats have a way of doing that right away. You know, like the
Mm,
Messis, the Jordans, the LeBrons. I think
talent
she's going to
wise,
set the
maybe.
league on fire.
I
I
think
think
there's a
she's
couple different things, or there's a
she
couple reasons why I would say more, not more likely. I think there's a decent chance she doesn't because one, the WNBA season starts in like a month or whatever. So like the physical recovery time, I think she's probably going to hit a physical wall at some point in her rookie year, and then she'll have to make some adjustments after that. So I think she'll have like a good rookie year type of thing. I'm not saying she's going to be basura or anything like that.
I
I
think
think we'll
she'll
see
be
like
a
a
top
jump.
5 player in the league year 1. No
We'll
doubt
see.
about it.
That's going to
No
be a
doubt
lot of
about it because
intriguing stuff.
there's never been someone that could do what she does consistently in the women's game. So she'll be top 5 player year 1. The only reason why she probably won't win MVP is because her team will have really bad records and you'll have, other candidates who are going to have similar numbers, but their win-loss will be better because, she's going to the worst team and the first overall pick,
She does get to
so
team up with Aaliyah Boston, though, former standout
yes,
South Carolina player. So
exactly.
there's some
Key a
talent
player she'll
brewing
be.
in Indiana.
So we'll see.
Let's
Enough
move
about
over.
that, Tom. I just
Moving
think
over to the
again,
men's side.
there's a difference between trash talking and there's a difference between jealousy, and I definitely think we have the jealousy side by a lot of these WNBA players. It is human nature, but I wish humans
Mhm.
would be better, Tom. I'll say it that way.
Well, we will look at the men's side of things, maybe not necessarily as in depth as again we had a similar narrative of a team kind of replacing on the fly a little bit, but really, I mean, if we're looking at this in kind of the traditional sense, actually building a program. Fascinating how time is a flat circle, and we come back to this after the one and done era, and the transfer era is kind of like on the uptick. Dan Hurley and what he has done with the UConn Huskies, continuing a bona fide blue blood program, which, when you consider what they were prior to the 1990s, before Calhoun was there, continued through Kevin Ollie, and now Dan Hurley, a team that is a school that is 6-0 in championship games, which is absolutely bananas. But really, this kind of came down for UConn, in my opinion, to having a really good game plan and executing it to perfection. I know that there's a little bit of commentary on, oh, Donovan Clingan didn't have a great game. Zach Edey made, this many shots. That was by design. I mean, let's take into consideration how Purdue lost in the tournament last year to Fairleigh Dickinson. What did Fairleigh Dickinson at that, the smallest team in the tournament last year? What did they do? They quadruple and quintupled Zach Edey, and they said, the shooters, you all have to beat us. And at the time, Purdue, basically, they were what Fairleigh Dickinson was counting on was shot variance, and that the Purdue Boilermaker guards would not be successful in making those 3-point shots. UConn implemented pretty much the same strategy. We're going to single cover Zach Edey. Clingan is just going to almost comically be on his left shoulder, just allowing an entire counter to his right. And then UConn's going to use their superior size and defense on the perimeter to limit the Purdue Boilermakers. 1 3-pointer made, fewest since I believe it was Michigan in, I'm blanking on the year, 1990 something, I think 92. And then the fewest 3-point shots attempted in a championship game since I think like Arkansas in 95. I have the years off a little bit, but 7 attempts only, 1 attempt only made. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is UConn said, we're going to let Zach Edey do whatever he wants. and nobody else is going to get in a rhythm. We can beat a Zach Edey-led Purdue team if he's shooting the ball 25 times a game.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of it depends on the team and the fit. It's the classic, like, if you're not in rhythm, you're not going to knock down as many shots. I think there's certain athletes and certain teams that doesn't apply to as much. Like, there's some guys that could come off cold off the bench and just knock down a shot at any moment, like Robert Ory, Big Shot Bob in the fourth quarter. So, it is different in college. I think it's simply put, like, you kind of hit on it, but Purdue was 1 for 7 on threes, Tom. You're not going to win in the modern game, a championship game, by making 1 threes. They were 9 for 29 from the floor outside of Zach Edey. Now, this is kind of interesting because it's like, does it work? Does one guy scoring all the points work? Well, it worked against Tennessee. It worked out just fine. I mean, it was a similar, I know they had a few more shots other guys knocked down, but he had more than half their points against Tennessee as well. That worked out just fine in that game. But UConn is a little bit different animal. I mean, look, even if they're not going to double team him against Klingon, against other big guys, 37 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks. Zach Edey was incredible. I mean, I think, he is a big story of this game, how well he played, how efficient he was. Obviously, UConn had that game plan and it worked well for them. But I do want to say that he played really good because UConn's big guy, Klingon, their other big guy, I think Diarra, they had some guys that, on paper should match up like better against them than anybody else, even one-on-one, and they couldn't stop him. I think this was like, I mean, obviously
I think they tried
UConn.
to.
What'd you say?
I don't think that they were trying to stop Edey. I think the
No,
whole point was let him.
Yes and no.
Like basically,
I don't
it
know.
was.
I don't agree with what you're saying. I agree that they didn't want to double team him. They were okay with him scoring, but I don't think any one of those guys were saying, Zach, you take the easy 2. I think they were trying to stop him, but they're trying to stop him one-on-one.
Yeah, it was one-on-one, and it was basically be big and defend him without fouling. That's the key, because you guys stay in the game, and we're going to win this championship. So I think it was like a pick your poison type of scenario, and you kind of picked the right one.
With that. I just don't agree with the narrative that they didn't try to stop him. I think all the guys were trying their hardest one-on-one to stop him, but they were cognizant of other factors, of foul trouble, of double teaming, and that's the difference between the pro game and the college game. I don't know that strategy would work as much in the pro game, because there's so many good players, so many good shooters. You say, like, we'll let your star score X amount of points as long as the other guys don't get involved. It works sometimes, but it doesn't work enough of the time. I know it's kind of sometimes worked against the Nuggets, but not consistently enough. I mean, like last night, Jokic, the Timberwolves said, let Jokic score instead of assist, and he put up 41 points and they won the game. So it didn't work for them last night, not even close to working. So I think it is a little different in the college game than the pro game, because I think a lot of the pro players are better shooters. They're more consistent. They're more confident. They're professionals. So I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that strategy at the pro level. I don't know if it would be nearly as successful, but at the college level, clearly it can be successful because Braden Smith is a great assist guy, but they don't have a consistent shooter, a consistent guy that would be consistently number 2. A lot of what they do is off open looks from Edey, and it's kind of interesting because the way Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue, they had the absolute opposite strategy of UConn, and that strategy worked. Let's quadruple team Edey. UConn said, let's give them one-on-one against them, let the other guys beat us, and it worked. I think UConn was just a better team. Had they chosen to double team him and keep him to less points, I think the outcome would have been fairly similar, Tom. I think, that's the thing about UConn. They have so many ways to beat you. They had 4 guys in double figures, another guy with 9 points. They can shoot threes. They can play down low. They can play in transition. They can defend. They have no weaknesses. Whatever plan they come up with seems to work. And it's one of the all-time great college teams. No doubt about that. I know that's our next talking point. They are absolutely the real deal at the college level. And I think they kind of have like a very good mix of like they don't have necessarily like an NBA all-star, but they have a lot of like NBA, like 3 or 4 guys that are NBA rotational pieces. And
Hmm.
that almost kind of works really well at the college level
Oh
because
yeah.
you don't have one guy that's going to be like, give me the ball, I'm going to score. It almost works well when you have NBA level talent that can also pass together, pass the ball around and also not have that ego because they have NBA talent, but they don't have and some of these guys might be lottery only because this is a weak draft, but they don't necessarily have NBA All-Star talent. Who's
Hmm.
to say that maybe one of these guys doesn't get lucky, make a All-Star game or two, but they don't have that perennial All-Star, that number one leading scorer, that ISO guy at the NBA level. They don't have that, but they do have 3 or 4 guys that might be NBA players and a few
Hmm.
other really good role players that are really, really good college players.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that development works out because we have seen from the college level to the pro game, guys that are in a little bit more of a rotational role or a role playing type thing become stars. I mean, I know it's happened with Kentucky most notably, where Devin Booker was coming off the bench for Kentucky, and he's one of the best players in the league today. So it'll be interesting to see where the development curves kind of change for some of these guys, primarily Stefan Castle, Donovan Clingan as well, as he's really really mobile, so he's going to fit into that. You know, protect the rim, run, get some dunks. Maybe at the pro level, he works in like a 3-point shot to the aim is kind of like requisite for that type of basketball player. I don't know if his profile is necessarily going to incorporate that, but that's beside the point. We're talking about this UConn team being among the all-time greats, and I think they absolutely are, especially if you want to look at kind of like a 2-year window, because I think there's enough overlap with this team that you can kind of like glom these two past championship squads together. In that, and I'm fairly certain I have this right, all 12 of their NCAA tournament games over this year and last year
Double
were double
digits.
digit victories. Like
Yes, that is correct.
that's an incredible statistic, especially when we consider uh, filling out our brackets every year. What do we say? Like, oh, the best team doesn't always win. Sometimes it's about who gets hot, who has a good game. Does RJ Davis or Caleb Love, like if they're on, their team can win it all, but if they're off, they might lose.
That's
To
what
have a
happened.
team where you have a close first half against Illinois, you have a close first half against Alabama, and then just at some point it stops being close. And it's almost like you don't even notice the margin just extending and extending and extending until it's too late. I think that what this UConn team has done, and again, given the overall environment of college basketball, very different from some of these other all-time great teams. I mean, Florida won 2 championships in a row because they had bona fide NBA talent, like 3 lottery picks that said, you
Mhm.
know what, let's run it back. That's different from this team. Looking at some of those Duke squads, Grant Hill, Christian Laettner, definite slam dunk pro players that's just ran it back for multiple years. So again, much like South Carolina, an all-time great team, but in a different way, and kind of like this new era, new college basketball landscape
Balance.
type of way.
More really good as opposed to 1 or 2 great. I think that was very,
Hmm.
very key. I mean, look, you look at the numbers, they're tough to argue against. I mean, plus 140 point differential is the
Yeah.
best in tournament history. I mean, that's never happened before, Tom. It's never happened in the history of the tournament. That is the best differential ever. Like you just said earlier, I had this written down as well. Back-to-back tournaments of winning by double digits in every game. I mean, they have so many ways to beat you. That's kind of what I like about them because, on a given day, they can throw the ball down to Klingon in the post and he can eat, or it could be Newton and Spencer, knocking down threes, or it could be Newton driving in transition. I mean, they have so many good guys on their team that are so good that, I mean, even their bench guys are good, kind of like South Carolina. They have 5 to 7 guys that at any moment can be the best player on their team. And that's kind of dangerous because, you have 1 or 2 superstars. You really do your homework to prep for them. Whenever there's like 5 to 7 guys, and, talk about variance. Well, one might be cold, two might be cold. The chances of like all 4 or 5 really good players being
Hmm.
cold is very, very unlikely. I think the only way you beat them is if you're just absolutely red hot on threes. but they're so well coached that they have such ways to, keep you from even taking threes as we saw against Purdue, So it's a very, very tough team to beat. I think again, the game grows. I think we don't necessarily have another all-time great college team that we're going up against. We have a lot of the guys leaving early, which I think does hurt the college game. So is their era as good as Duke's era? Probably not. Are they aided by playing a little bit lesser teams? Probably. But at the same time, though, a lot of these teams and players are growing. So it's not like they're playing against nobodies. So yeah, I think their coach Hurley is such a perfectionist that it is incredible because he could be up 20 at the half and he's talking about things he needs to fix. And I think that's halftime adjustments. You look at their second half point differential has been even better than their first half in this tournament. And I think that's because Dan Hurley will sit down at halftime and he'll know exactly what he wants to do. And they'll wear the other opponent down in the second half. My mom was watching the game. My mom started betting on major events based on my advice. And I told her bet heavy on UConn. And she texted me in the first half while I'm on air. UConn doesn't look that dominant. I better not lose a bet from your advice.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like, Mom, just wait. They're so deep. They're so balanced. They always, clear it out by the second half. So they're almost like, as my mom said, maybe they don't look as dominant as they are. But then you look up and, they're up like 25-30 by the time the game is over. So that's right, Mom. They covered. You can go to bed and rest easy. They covered. You won money on
I
the
can't believe
championship
you've
game.
roped your mother into the degenerate lifestyle of
She
sports gambling.
she gambles a lot less than I do, smaller amounts, and she'll only gamble on the major sporting events. So she's not out there, doing regular season games. But yes, look, eras are very
Oh
hard to
man.
compare. Can I
Hmm.
say equivocally, are they the third, the fourth, the seventh, the eighth, the first, the second? I can't say exactly where I put them, but given their sheer dominance of back-to-back titles, they got to be somewhere in that 10 range. If I had to guess, I don't have my notebook. I haven't pulled out every great historic team that ever played. I haven't obviously watched all the eras. We know eras are hard to compare, but given their sheer dominance, the margin of victory, how easily they did it, they definitely have to be for sure in the top 10 greatest ever. Don't you think, Tom? It'd be tough not to put them in the top 10.
Yeah, like I'm not super well versed enough in like college basketball to necessarily be able to like rank that sort of thing. Because I mean, again, you've got like the Bill Walton, UCLA Bruins, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like just like you said, eras are too different, but they're definitely in that same company. I would say, yeah.
Sure.
And
Speaking
in
of company
speaking of rarefied air, for
and Bill
multiple
Walton.
reasons, we've got Zach Edey. I believe he's now the sixth two-time Player of the Year. Ralph Sampson has been the National Player of the Year three times. Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jerry Lucas, and Oscar Robertson, all multiple Player of the Years. And if some of those names might not be ringing a bell, that's because the most recent player to have accomplished this is Ralph Sampson in the early '80s. That's the last time that we've had a multiple-time national player. So I think it's pretty simple and easy to say that Zach Edey is among the all-time college great basketball players, and I say that because college does not always necessarily translate into professional for myriad reasons.
Although with all of those guys you mentioned, it did. But like Tyler Hansbrough,
Yes.
for example, another one of the all-time great college players.
Hmm.
JJ Redick, Adam Morrison.
Sure.
Although Redick was a really good pro, but obviously not near the level that he was in college.
Exactly.
But
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
Zach Edey is going to follow kind of a similar line. That can be a conversation for a different point in time. I mean,
it will
uh,
be. It will
for
be.
all the detractors who say, "Oh, he's doing this just because he's tall," I mean, uh, I don't have the graphic pulled up, but like, there's a graphic out there about all the players who are 7'3", 7'4", 7'5" in college basketball, and nobody comes close to the numbers that Zach Edey has put up this year. He's not just tall; he's put in the work, he has put in the effort
He's got great
to really
touch.
develop over the year, and that's also a testament to Matt Painter and the job that he has done as Purdue's coach. And to see the trajectory that, yeah, his freshman, sophomore year, Zach Edey, was coming off the bench, wasn't a star player right away. Wasn't really till his junior year that he became kind of the guy for the Purdue Boilermakers, and coming back again, getting even better at the game at his game. I mean, he was at a point where we tip. He's at a point where his conditioning is really great because we typically associate big men as needing a little bit more of a breather. I think it was. I'm going to attribute this to Shaquille O'Neal. I could be mistaken. But he's like, we have to run farther because court's 90 feet wide. We're going basket to basket. The guards are just going a much shorter distance back and forth. So of course they're not as tired as the big men are. Zach Edey playing basically entire games when we don't always see that with big men at any level. I think it's really, really impressive to what he's been able to do. And it's that sort of work ethic that makes me have no doubt that he's going to be a contributing player at the professional level. Maybe not a starter, probably I would say like a rotation piece, just because the way that the NBA operates is a good bit different from the way the college game does. But I mean, if this were 15, 20, 30 years ago, Zach Edey would be probably a star in the NBA. People would be lining up to pick him 1 or 2 overall.
Yeah, I think it's always first off for the first part of this argument. I'm just going to take away the NBA portion of it because we're talking about
Sure.
college player in
Of course,
general.
yeah.
You mentioned the names Bill Walton, Ralph Sampson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson. Only a handful of guys have been College Player of the Year on multiple occasions. I know since they named it the Naismith Award, it's only been 3 actually. Walton and Sampson did it, 3 times. He's done it twice. 22.3 points, 12.9 rebounds. His junior year comes back even better. His senior year, 25.2 points, 12.2 rebounds. First guy since Larry Bird, speaking of great names, with 900 points and 415 rebounds in a season. He also had the second most points in a single NCAA tournament, 177 points. Only Glenn Rice had more than him in a single tournament. So I think the numbers are there. The resume is there. I think the impact is there for Zach Edey. He is 100% one of the all-time great college players. And, good free throw shooter, about 70%. He's got great touchdown low. Kind of the same deal with Shaq. In many ways, I think of, Shaq was a little bit quicker. But, like Shaq, he has incredible touchdown low. I know people will act, as if you're if you get under the basket, it's assumed that you should make every shot, but there's a certain level of touch and finesse that a lot of big guys simply don't have. I mean, like Sean Bradley was 7'6". Why was he not the best NBA player ever in an era where the big man was valued? So he does have really, really good touch, a really good finishing ability, stuff that gets very underrated. He is definitely one of the best college players ever. And you look at Trace Jackson Davis. He is starting for the Warriors right now, Tom Casselman, and he's a very similar player to Edey. I know he's a little bit more athletic, but he's not a shooter. He's a rebounder. He's a scorer down low. He's an NBA starter. So I think there's certain teams that he could start. Really depends on the system, depends on who you have. I really don't necessarily even think that he's necessarily a bench player. I think there's a lot of NBA teams that he could start for. Really depends on which one he goes to. Depends on what they focus on.
Yeah.
But he definitely is good enough to be a starter. I think, just depends on what situation he goes into. Because he is a better player than Trace Jackson Davis. And Trace Jackson Davis is starting on a team with the winning record in the Golden State Warriors, even though he can't make a 3 to save his life. Edey, by the way, has been quoted as saying that he can shoot. He doesn't do it because Matt Painter told him not to. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say, because shooting is something that is partially worked on, partially talent-wise, but it doesn't always match up, Tom, but generally speaking, more often than not, if you're a good free throw shooter, which he is, you tend to be decent at jump shots and outside shots. It's almost kind of like the whole J.J. McCarthy in Michigan, which I know we'll talk about in weeks to come. Is J.J. McCarthy a top 10 pick? Could he air out and make all the throws he can? I think he might be maybe he's a guy we're sleeping on. But Harbaugh wanted to win. He knew what he had. He didn't need to have that guy do that. It's the
Mhm.
same thing as Michael Jordan. The saying like, who can keep Michael Jordan under 30 points, under 20 points? Dean Smith, because of the system he was in. So there could be a whole nother aspect of Zach Edey's game
Mhm.
that we don't even know about because he has said that he can shoot threes, Tom. He
I can
has
believe
said
that.
that. He has said that. So I think a lot of us are assuming here that he's not going to shoot threes. I mean, you brought up Brooke Lopez. You know,
Mhm.
Brooke Lopez was a post player. If Edey has a free throw touch, I'm willing to bet he can knock down threes. I think he could be an NBA starter. I think a lot of people are dismissing him as just a role player. He's not going to work at all at the next level. Again, I'm not saying he's an all
Mhm.
star, but I think he could be a starter depending on the fit and the situation. Definitely a
Yeah.
guy that we'll be watching in the NBA for years to come, Zach Edey.
Yeah, I think I should amend that because I know, like, technically for a lot of years, Manu Ginobili wasn't a starter for the San Antonio Spurs. I think Zach Edey could start. I don't necessarily know if he'll close, type of thing, if that makes sense. Like, just kind of like as a matchup thing, he might be like a good way to get the game rolling, but he might not be there in like the crunch time minutes.
Oh, I don't
Like
know.
that's we'll see how that goes. Like I said, with a lot of these guys on UConn, it'll be interesting to see how their arcs take off at the professional level. Which, speaking of, we've got the NBA play-in tournament
Oh,
shortly upon
Coach Cal,
us.
real quick,
Oh, Coach Cal, that's right. We do have to
which
touch on him
transitions well to
briefly.
Matt Painter and NBA and skill set and all that because
Hmm.
uh, I like Coach Cal a lot more than a lot of people like Tom. By the way,
Yeah,
so go ahead. You want to
yeah.
get
Well,
that
Coach
started?
Cal is going from Kentucky to Arkansas. Basically, the Arkansas program had enough boosters put up some money to buy him out. He arrives to a team with a grand total of one player on the roster for next year.
Kentucky is paying part of the money. I don't know the exact
Hmm.
contract, but it has not all been bought out by Arkansas. Kentucky's paying part
Correct.
of it, but
Yeah.
considerably less than they would have otherwise, I believe.
Yeah, and that leaves us in a position now where Kentucky, which is a blue blood program, rumored. I don't think we have any like definite confirmation that say Scott Drew was offered
Well,
a
there's a rumor
deal.
that he turned it down
Exactly.
as
Like
of
we
a
don't.
couple hours ago today, Tom.
Yeah, so there's that floating around. There's some rumors. Billy Donovan, the Chicago Bulls coach, does he want to go back to the college game personally? Why would you do that? I think the pro job is considerably less stress than the college game. Dan Hurley, fresh off a championship, was asked about it,
Yeah.
and he said, I like my wife. I don't want to go through a divorce. It was hard enough going from Rhode Island to UConn. I don't think he's going to
Sure.
make that move. Plus, I mean, UConn has had considerably more tournament success and just overall conference success than Kentucky has. So that leaves Kentucky in a little bit of an odd spot as far as what their next moves would be. I mean, if I'm Kentucky, I'm throwing anything at the wall. I'm calling up Don Staley and saying, "Hey, you interested? We got a big bag of money if you want to come coach our men's program." I think that wouldn't be completely out of the question. Don't think it'll
If
happen.
you think he struggled with fans, if she goes in there and doesn't win right away, there's going to be so many sexist and racist things coming out of that fan
Hmm.
base. It's going to be just disastrous,
Yeah,
Tom.
no, it ultimately comes down to Calipari needed a change of scenery. I mean, he brought a championship to Kentucky. He brought NBA talent, but just looking at how they've done the past couple of seasons, both in conference as well as the tournament, I don't think the tournament's a great metric for determining the success of a coach or the success of a program because of the one and done nature. I think you look at how you do in conference as a better indicator of success. But feels like things got a little bit stale with Kentucky and what they've been doing. And I think, like you said, with that expectation that as soon as you arrive at Rupp Arena, you better be hoisting a banner, whether a season's taken place yet or not. It feels kind of similar to Alabama's football program, where look at the pressure that Nick Saban was under. And I think that he's perfectly capable of continuing to coach, but he's like, you know what? I'm done. Like at a certain point, it just wears on you to no matter how good you are at your job, you just need to like take that inordinate pressure off you, move on. It's just kind of determining at a certain point that you just don't have whatever is necessary at that position in you anymore. For Saban, he said, you know what? I'm going to retire. I'm going to ride off into the sunset for Calipari. It's going to Arkansas, a program that, has a national championship from the 1990s, and certainly has a lot of finances ready and available for him. So it's a new challenge for him in a different environment to take Arkansas to new heights.
All right, so I'm looking at my phone here, Tom.
Go
I
for it.
know a lot of guys are focused on what Coach Cal hasn't done in the last few years. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. The last 4 seasons. I know it's 5 years because of the COVID year, but the last 4 seasons he's won 1 tournament game. But then let's look at his first 10 seasons there, because I think there's a lot of variance. We saw this in Coach K. He had all the wins, then he went through a losing streak, then he started winning, then he lost again, then he won again. It's called variance. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of his first 10 seasons, he at least made the Elite 8 at Kentucky. 7 of the first 10, Tom Casselman. He had a national championship. He had 4 Final Fours, Tom Casselman. Oh my goodness. This is a soccer reference, but Thierry Henry was talking about Xavi Hernandez, the Barca coach. They were going through a little bit of a struggle earlier this season. He was being pressured by the management, the fans to leave. He just said, I'm stepping down at the end of the year, which now he's rethinking it because the results are coming. And Thierry Henry's like, this guy didn't just forget how to coach in 1 or 2 months. The results started coming. Coach Cal is a great basketball coach. Is he perfect? Nobody's perfect. Is there mistakes he's made? Yes, there's been mistakes he's made. This is the trivia question for the program, by the way, Tom. He is one of 8 coaches to have been at a school for at least 15 seasons with 1 national title, at least 1, at least 4 Final Fours, and a 750 winning percentage. We're going to revisit this in trivia, so don't answer it now. I'll let you start, burning the brain. But only 8 coaches have ever done what he's done at Kentucky. I think it's the same thing with Matt Painter. Matt Painter is a great basketball coach. Just because Purdue's lost in the first round and the second round early so many years in a row, does it mean that he's a bad coach? Should they fire him? No, because I think Purdue gets it. They don't have the same spoiled fan base as Kentucky. I always think of Kentucky as such a program that they're a top 5 program. And if they don't have top 5 results for 4 or 5 years, then they freak out. But that's also what makes it so hard, though, because who can they get that's better than Coach Cal? It's the easiest situation is to say that maybe they're not responding to him. Maybe the one and done isn't working. Or maybe it's the one game scenario of tournament variance where things just happen to go wrong. The Oakland game, by the way, Jack Golke hit some incredible 3-pointers where the defense was in his face. He did things that Coach Cal can't be blamed for, Tom Casselman. Simply put, it was just March Madness as we know it. I think he's a great leader of men. He's a great motivator. He's great at picking out who the best players are, and he's great at getting them to gel together, because there's a picture of him with 7 of his All-Stars at All-Star Weekend that surfaced this week. He still stays in touch with all these NBA players. And like Devin Booker, I think, is one of the guys pictured. Devin Booker has no animosity towards him for keeping him on the bench. He somehow gets these guys to buy in and play. And I think it is hard for freshmen to always deliver. And when the talent maybe isn't quite as good as it was a few years ago, because he's still got a lot of good talent, but the guys he has right now aren't Anthony Davis or Devin Booker. So it becomes even harder when you have the second-rate freshman versus the first-rate freshman to win games. There is, people will always find a hole. There has been some in-game adjustments, some questionable decisions, but you're not going to get a better recruiter. You're not going to get a better leader of men. I think there's only a handful of college coaches out there that are better than him. You're not going to get Jade Wright out of retirement. If you do, hats off to you. Then you get a good move. But you're not going to get Dan Hurley to leave UConn. Not going to happen, Tom. It just, and a lot of folks probably don't want that Kentucky job. There is so much pressure from the fan base and people. And by the way, Kentucky was not going to fire him, Tom. They did not want to pay to fire him. He left on his own accord. They were not going to fire him. AD said we're not going to fire Coach Cal. And I think he kind of sees that as well. It's like, well, is it worth for us to pay all this money when we might not get somebody better? That's the tricky part about a job like Kentucky. Yeah, you let him go, but is there really anybody better than him? And a
Yeah.
lot of these all-time legends, Coach K retired, Roy Williams retired, and a lot of the top-level guys. I mean, I personally think he's a little bit overhyped, but Bill Self, he's not leaving Kansas. Dan Hurley's not leaving UConn. It just, I don't know that there's anybody better than Coach Cal. He's the guy that, by the way, Tom, is very misunderstood. He does a lot for the community. He's more involved than almost any college coach ever in doing stuff for the Kentucky community. And I think a lot of it came down to people always want to judge from afar. They want to judge like, oh, you've got a great job. You've got all this great talent. But I think talking to human nature, well, we're talking about the women's game earlier. Human nature is every single human being in this world, Tom, wants to feel appreciated. Some more than others. But if you're going to work and you're around an environment where everybody's telling you, you stink, you're terrible, we want you out. And this isn't so much from the Kentucky players, the Kentucky administration. I think they get who they had in Coach Cal. This is from the Kentucky fan base. This one's on the Kentucky fan base. Coach Cal is leaving because of pressure for the Kentucky fan base. He wants to be somewhere where he's appreciated. All those Arkansas fans that hate him over Malik Monk. You were not there covering Arkansas sports when Malik Monk was coming out of high school, had to choose between Arkansas and Kentucky. He chose Kentucky. Arkansas fans hate Coach Cal because he took Malik Monk from the Arkansas Razorbacks. All those guys are going to be rethinking it. All of a sudden, all those negative things are going to be positive things. Coach Cal is obviously a slam dunk hire for Arkansas. And I hate to say it, but I think maybe they need a fresh voice. But at the current moment, I don't think there will be a better voice than who Kentucky had in Coach Cal. They might be going through a rebuilding period. And it's not only because of him. And rebuilding in the sense that, are they going to be a tournament team? Yes. But are these first or second round exits going to continue? Probably.
I mean, if they want to go ahead and have a similar style of basketball where it's fast-paced offense and questionable defense, give Nate Oates a call.
Oh, that's who they're going to call.
Pry him away from Alabama. It'll be interesting to see how that program shakes out.
They're not going to get any better. They're not going to get any worse. It's just going to be the same thing all over again.
Yeah.
So,
well, moving into the NBA now, as I mentioned, we have the play-in tournament shortly upon us. On the Eastern Conference side, the Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks are locked in for those last two spots. The Warriors and Lakers, still some seeding to be done, but they are locked in for the play-in tournament itself. We still have a couple of teams, though, that are in line for the playoffs. And on the Eastern Conference side, only 3 teams. Celtics, Bucks, and Knicks have clinched actual top 6 playoff spots. Basically, 4 through 8 is to be determined. On the Western Conference side, a little bit more defined. You got the Pelicans, Suns, and Kings battling for that last guaranteed playoff spot. Otherwise, it'll be tournament time for them. So, Kamen, let's start out with the West Conference side of things, as that is the more compelling kind of area, you know. And I know for you, you're holding out some long shot hope that both the Warriors and the Lakers can make it out. But as it presently stands in the standings, with just a couple games left, they are the 10 seed for the Warriors, 9 seed for the Lakers. They currently would be facing up against each other. So, Kamen, how do you kind of see this shaking out for the play-in tournament?
Yeah, so first I want to cover the Pelicans, Suns, and Kings, because like you mentioned, those 3 teams, 2 of them are going to be in the play-in tournament. 1 is going to be the 6th seed and not having to play a 1 or 2 game scenario to make the playoffs. So there's a lot of weird scenarios where there could be a 3-way tie where the tiebreaker gets even more crazy. I'm not going to get too deep into those scenarios. But right now, 3 games to go. The Pelicans are 2 games ahead of the Kings and have the tiebreaker over them. Now, they play tonight, and this game tonight's going to say, we're recording on a Thursday afternoon. The game is tonight. I think it's a late game on TNT. So after tonight's game, the playoff picture is going to look a lot more clear. Like basically, if the Pelicans win that game, they're pretty much going to be a virtual shoe-in for the last spot, which is where they're currently right now, by the way. So that will get interesting. They do have a really tough schedule. New Orleans does, though. They
Mm-hmm.
play the Kings, the Lakers, and the Warriors, all teams that are battling for that last spot. Now, I'm going to say the Pelicans will find a way to finish ahead of the Kings because they basically have to win out. The Kings have to lose out. So I think the Kings are going to be squarely in the play-in tournament. Now, whether the 7 seed, the 8 seed, the 9, the 10 seed, that remains to be seen. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, I think that last spot to make the top 6 will go down to the Suns and the Pelicans. And I think the Suns are going to get it. They have the head-to-head tiebreaker, which goes a long way. Now, they play at the Kings and at the Timberwolves, which is really interesting because the Kings are also balloting for that spot. The Timberwolves could be anywhere from the 1 to 3 seed. What seed do they want to get? I mean, I guess we'll know. Like, are they going to try to win that game? Are they going to try to lose that game? It's likely the 2 or 3 for Minnesota after last night's loss against Denver.
Mm-hmm.
If Phoenix finds a way to get to that 6th seed, though, I think they will, just because Phoenix is, better than a few of those other teams in that bunch. Now, the team to watch, Tom, that's going to make a run here late is the Warriors. Mark this down. The Warriors are going to make a run here. They're playing incredible basketball. I believe 8 of 9 wins. They're 10th right now, but they're a half a game back at the Lakers. They have the tiebreaker against the Lakers. So if them and the Lakers finish the same, they get the
Mm-hmm.
home field. They're 1 game back against the Kings, but they have a much easier schedule down the stretch. They play the Blazers, the Pelicans at home, the Jazz at home. The Kings have to play the Pelicans and the Suns. I actually think Golden State is going to go ahead and jump the Kings as well. So they'll get in that 8 spot. Now, the Lakers don't have the tiebreaker to the Kings. So I think the Lakers and the Kings are going to get that 9-10 spot, and we're going to set up the perfect Kamen Entchev dream scenario where the Warriors win their first game. They get into the 7 seed in the playoffs, and then the Lakers win 2 in a row, and they get the 8 seed in the Western Conference playoffs. And we have the likely rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals in the first round, Nuggets and Lakers. It's going to be incredible. And we'll have the Mavs and the Clippers in the 4-5. That's been a fun playoff series. So there's a lot of scenarios out there, but
Mm-hmm.
the way the Warriors are playing basketball, the way the tiebreakers even out, I actually think Golden State is going to slide into the 8th spot, and they're going to actually win 1 game right away, and then they'll be in the play-in tournament. Won't even have to be in that last game. So look for the Suns to get the 6th seed. Then we get the Pelicans as the 7, the Warriors as the 8. We get the Kings as the 9, the Lakers as the 10, and Lakers and Warriors both make the playoffs. And we get to see LeBron and Steph for at least 4, likely 5, maybe even 6. Do I dare even say 7? At least 7 more playoff games. And depending on the matchup,
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. Warriors, Thunder, Warriors, Wolves. If it's Lakers versus Wolves or Thunder, we could have a little bit deeper run for my guys.
Well, I certainly have a couple of numbers that will interest you a little bit later on in the program. Then,
Okay.
as you convert your mom into being a degenerate gambler, I will continue my crusade to convert you into a futures better. I think you got a pretty
Okay.
good layout on how things are going to break down. Like you mentioned, the Suns have a little bit of an easier path to getting out of that 7th spot into
They
the 6th
control their
spot, guaranteed.
destiny, at
Exactly,
least.
and they're only a half game behind the Pelicans. The Pelicans, might I add, that are playing without Brendan Ingram, at least for tonight against Sacramento. And
Mhm.
then the Suns get the Kings on the second day of a back-to-back. So I think that those are 2 things that set up nicely for the Kings to help out the Suns tonight with a win over the Pelicans, and then the Suns to be able to take advantage of having a little bit more rest, albeit they'll be on the road, but a little bit more rest than Sacramento for going ahead and taking that sixth spot. As far as how the rest of it shakes out, I mean, these teams are playing each other so much that I don't necessarily have a straight up and down 7 through 10 who's going to fit in where. But I definitely think that's going to be some of the most compelling basketball we're going to see. I know that you're not going to like it. I think the NBA would really like to have a Lakers Warriors matchup for getting into that last playoff spot or continuing on.
Really? I
I
think
think
they'd rather
so.
have them both be in the playoffs because that's more games.
I guess it kind of depends on what you're looking for because I think that individual game is going to be such a huge draw as opposed to a longer series
See, I
where,
don't think it's going to happen because the Golden State, they're hot right now, and their schedule is
yeah,
easy, Tom. It lays out very
yeah,
easily for them. 2 out of 3 at home, and 2 out of 3 really bad teams. They're rolling right now. Golden State, I
yeah,
think, isn't going to want to be in that scenario.
and in aggregate, I mean, better point differential than the Lakers and the Kings. So just like even on the entire season, they've been a little bit better than perhaps their records suggest. So I could definitely see them moving up into that eighth spot and having a potential face off there uh, with the Pelicans. I was blanking because I'm looking at the
Yeah.
standings with the Pelicans for that play-in spot. And again, Brandon Ingram's health is going to be pretty key for New Orleans heading down the stretch. But I agree with you. I think the Suns grabbed that last spot in the playoffs. On the East side of things, we have a lot more variability. Like I said, we only have 3 teams that have clinched a playoff spot. We only have one team that's really clinched their seeding. That is to say, the Boston Celtics, who have they have their division. They have the #1 overall seed. They are by far and away over the rest of the conference, just running away. They're at 62 wins. Nobody else at this moment has 50. So we've got a lot of different ways that this can go, Common. Do you feel like the way that the current playoff structure is kind of set where we've got Cavaliers, Magic, Pacers as 4, 5, and 6, 76ers and Heat as 7 and 8, or do you see some jumbling where maybe 76ers or Heat maybe fall out or jump in rather to securing a locked-in playoff berth as opposed to being in this play-in tournament?
Yeah, this is very interesting because, I mean, it's possible that the Heat and or the Sixers both are in the playing tournament, and the Heat just made the NBA Finals, and they've made the NBA Finals. What is that? Twice in the last 4 years.
Something
They're
like that, yeah.
consistently in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we've already seen them upset the Bucks before as a much lower seed. Actually, they were in the playing tournament last year, Tom, when they made the NBA Finals. And then obviously the Sixers, Embiid, MVP last year, whether he deserved it or not, MVP level player, whether he's the best, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, whatever. When he's at his best, when he's healthy, he's right around that top 5 player in the world. And then even Tyrese Maxey, their #2 guy, he's been hurt a lot this year. So they're really only there because their 2 best players have been
Mhm.
injured for much of the last few months. Well, guess what? Both of their 2 best players are back, and they're both playing really, really well. So the Bulls and Hawks will be 9-10 respectfully. I think Philadelphia is going to play their way into the final 6 and avoid the play-in tournament. So they're 1 game back of the Magic, and they play them. And they already have the tiebreaker against the Magic. So if they beat Orlando, they would finish ahead of Orlando. And then they play the Nets the last game, which is a pretty easy win. Pacers could be in trouble. I know the Cavs technically are in there too, but they really only have to get like 1 more win to be
Mhm.
squarely away from that. I'm going to bank on them winning somewhere. So the Pacers, though, don't have the tiebreaker against Philly or Orlando, I don't believe. And then they also have to play. They play. Who was it I have written down? The Pacers play. They played somebody good. The Cavs, I think, they're playing. So that might be a tough game for them. Cleveland make sure they get in. They get their seed. So Orlando, by the way, I do think they're going to beat Milwaukee the last game of the year because there's a couple other scenarios, but in all likelihood, the Bucks will have the 2 seed clinched by the last Sunday. They've already said they're not playing Giannis the rest of the regular season because of an injury. I think Orlando will beat Milwaukee in that game. And then it's going to be Indiana and Miami in the play-in tournament are my two picks. So the Pacers have faded lately. I continue to see that fade late. The Heat will be in the play-in tournament. Indiana will be in the play-in tournament. I think they'll ultimately get out of there. And Miami will probably get the 7 seed. And the Milwaukee Bucks are going to have quite a first-round test against the Miami Heat. It's going to be,
Mhm.
I do think Milwaukee's going to, well, if Giannis is healthy, I think they're going to
That's
come out
another
on
thing to
top. But he's
consider.
injured. Because I know I've been sitting here talking about how Milwaukee's going to beat Boston in the playoffs, which they did beat them earlier this week, by the way, Tom. But a lot of that relies on Giannis's health. So I'm going to pick with the way the tiebreakers shake out, with the way the teams are playing. I think the Heat and Pacers are going to be in that playing game. The Sixers have come on of late. The schedule matches up well. The tiebreakers match up well. I think Philadelphia will get out of that play-in tournament.
Mhm.
Philadelphia, but that's going to be an interesting team as a 6 seed because they're going to be also a danger in the second round and the first round wherever they play because they'll probably be favored in their first round series if they get a 6. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm leaning more toward the standings kind of holding as far as things go because like you said the Magic and 76ers that's obviously going to be a huge matchup. But I think that the Magic, I mean given that they have a game ahead on the 76ers so far and they know that they want to be in this tournament as opposed to having to rely on, some other scenarios beating Milwaukee in the last game of the season. Just kind of like looking at their depth chart right now, like you said, Tyrese Maxey day to day, Joel Embiid, he's playing, but he's still kind of coming back a little bit from that meniscus injury.
Looked pretty good
Whereas,
last night, I think it was.
whereas outside Franz Wagner, Orlando's pretty healthy across the board. So I'm actually leaning a little more toward status quo over the last couple of games, and even to the point of 76ers and Miami Heat being in some form or fashion the 7 and 8 seed. I have no confidence in the Hawks or the Bulls making any sort of noise whatsoever. This is the Western Conference is a great example of why the play-in tournament works. Eastern Conference is an example of why it really doesn't work
Well,
because
it
there's just
worked
a.
last year. The team got to the championship. In
But the
Miami
Miami
Heat,
Heat were already in like the old structure of the playoffs. I think they were the 8 seed going into the play-in tournament. Like they didn't need to win to get in, if that makes
well,
sense.
the
Like if
Bulls
there
were
were
up
no
on them
tournament.
with like 3 minutes left in that game. The Bulls almost got there. So, I mean, look, I would pick Miami as well in
Mhm.
Indiana or whoever comes out there. But that's the beauty of the playing tournament. The Bulls are a very hot and cold team. Look out for the Bulls. They beat the Timberwolves a couple weeks ago. They have these weird games where they beat a good team, they lose to a bad team. I would not be so quick to assume it's going to be necessarily
Uh,
status quo because the Hawks are getting Trae Young back. He's a streaky guy. If he's hot from 3, DeMar DeRozan, he gets hot. The
mm,
one game scenario, I think, Tom, I absolutely love the playing tournament. I think it is
mm.
phenomenal. Creates a ton of drama, and I can't wait to take part in the playing tournament. It is one of the best things the NBA has done, other than the All-Star game, which there's not much they can do, honestly.
Right.
NBA has done a really good job of, doing all these extra things. The playing tournament. I like the in-season tournament. I like a lot of the stuff the NBA does, no doubt about that.
Yeah, well, we will definitely be touching on the NBA playoffs as we will have a ton more clarity for next week's show. As of right now, we'll touch briefly on the Masters. We're not super huge into golf, but it is the biggest tournament of the year in the golf world. Currently underway after a little bit of weather delay. And we'll pick our winners. I've got the live leaderboard up right now. I can
I have
tell
that
you,
up as well.
I didn't have a Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, I'm my pick for the tournament, and it's we got a long ways to go. They're just beginning. Not looking great for my guy Hideki Matsuyama, the 2021 Green Jacket winner for the Masters. He's currently up to or 2 over par on the day, but plenty of time for him to make up that ground. It's a pretty big lead. Like I said, DeChambeau starting out -6. A couple guys tied at -4. before we have a whole big glut of 1s and 2 under par. So it's a lot of kind of glomming up right now, but I'm sure we'll get some more clarity. Kamen, I'm sure you're going with your guy that you always go with as well for winning this one.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy, it's his time, baby. Second in 2022. Almost got it. The only major he's missing. He's the second favorite. I know Xander Schauffele's another popular pick. He's been playing some incredible golf. My other guy that I like is John Rahm. He's
Mhm.
a recent champion, -2. He's only 4 shots back. I think Rory's going to get this. He's going to pull it out. I think John Rahm will be in the mix. Those are kind of the two guys I'm looking at. But big fan of Rory McIlroy. I think he gets it done this time. King Rory, show him how it's done, baby. And Rory, we trust. Real quick, I know I'm looking at my phone here. Let's see, Tiger Woods. He's started. Hasn't even started yet.
Mhm.
254. Tiger Woods is gonna tee off.
There you
So
go.
I am in a Masters work pool. I know I have John Rahm, I have Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy, and Xander Schauffele as my guys. Like basically, you pick multiple guys and
Mhm.
they average out their finish. So those are the 4 guys I'm looking at. Tom Casselman.
Well, best of luck to you there. We'll move on to a tangential topic with our weekly betting locks, our locks of the week, as we like to call them. A little bit better for me, granted, by the hook, I think is what it's termed in Vegas. That half point coming in really, really handy on a game where we were on opposite sides. But, you know, Caitlin Clark not coming through with that last free throw.
Did me dirty. Yeah. I mean, that Iowa UConn game was Iowa went up like 7 with a few minutes to go.
Caitlin
Uh,
Clark does not cover spreads, therefore she cannot be the GOAT.
right.
Continue.
-2.5 Iowa. I had you had +2.5 UConn. It was 71-69 Iowa. There was the offensive call, which, a whole nother, that could be a whole nother can of worms. I'm still not sure how to feel about it, Tom, because my first reaction was tough call, but then I watched the play back and I was like, that was a moving screen. And I tend to
My
lean,
feeling. Oh, go ahead.
no, I tend to lean. It's complicated. Again, I see both sides of the argument. I tend to lean if that's a call in the first quarter, should be called in the fourth quarter. Now, what makes it more difficult, though, is that it's not always called in the first quarter. There's
Yes.
multiple moving screens. That one was actually, believe it or not, if you look at the video, was fairly egregious, though. Like there's variants of moving screens. Her
Hmm.
feet were so far wide. It's one of those calls where one call doesn't influence the game. I could see why both sides are mad. I could
Hmm.
make arguments as to it was the right call, it was the wrong call. That's just I'm a little bit split on it, if that makes sense, Tom. I
Sure.
have I can't. I know usually I'm a passionate guy that will defend it each way. If they always call it the moving screen, they should call it in the last moment of the game. The problem is they don't always call it the moving screen. So that's where the complexity in it adds up. But
Exactly.
after the way they did call it, though, 86% free throw shooter, Caitlin Clark, they're up 2, up 1, goes to the line for 2, makes the first, misses the second, barbecues me on that spread. That was tough. So I missed that one. You got that one. I had NC State covering against Purdue. They did not. UConn covering against Bama, 11.5. They did. 86-72. I've been winning a lot. A rare losing week. 1-2 brings my record to 35, 27-1, 8 over. But I'm not 15 over like Tom. 39-24. You had the UConn cover. You did miss Indiana State in the NIT
Hmm.
against Seton Hall, -3. Seton Hall winning by 2. And you had UConn and Bama under 161.5, 86-72, 158 points. So what do you got
Yeah,
for us
nice
this
and
week,
comfortable
Tom
there for
Castleman?
this week. I've got a couple futures, a couple I'll be taking, and I'll hip you into a couple futures that you might like as well, Common, as these will be decided by our next show. Got a couple of play-in tournament wagers.
Okay.
We talked about Pelicans. We agreed on that one. A -105 for the Pelicans to be in the play-in tournament. As we said, they are currently a half game ahead of the Phoenix Suns for that 6-7 spot.
So
Like
if they play in the play-in tournament, you win.
correct,
Okay.
exactly. A similar bet for the 76ers, plus 135. So if you want some plus money Casselman there for the 76ers, they are currently in the seventh spot. Definitely a lot more fluid of a situation in the Eastern
So you
Conference,
think
but
they'll be in the play-in tournament?
I do think they'll be in
Because
the
I
play-in
don't.
tournament. I
I
could
don't.
see. I I mean, part of this is also for the sake of locks of the week, making this a lock. There's not a ton of action going on that I feel really confident in, but I can absolutely see a path where Orlando goes ahead and wins this game. Philadelphia might not have a pathway, even
Oh,
though
if
they
they
have an easy
lose, yeah.
matchup
If
against
they
the
lose
Brooklyn
against
Nets.
Orlando, yeah, but I think they win it against Orlando because there, a lot of things can happen in the last game, but in all likelihood, if they beat Orlando, they're not in the play-in tournament. If they lose to Orlando, they're
Mhm.
almost for sure in the play-in tournament.
So
So
if it's
a
going to
lot of
be
it
a
goes
coin
down to this
flip,
game.
if it's a coin flip, I'll go ahead take that at plus 135. Kamen, I'm not taking these as locks. I just want to hip you to them. Plus 165 for the Warriors to make it into the playoffs, which means they get out of the play-in tournament.
They
I believe
will,
it's about 280 for the Lakers.
and
So
they will as well.
if you want to go ahead and put that down,
Oh,
a little bit of a
yes.
future, so you got to wait just like a week or
A
so.
week, but it worked for UConn. I could do this.
Yeah,
You
exactly,
say
exactly.
plus
See,
280? Plus
on
280?
Bovada, that's
Okay.
what they have it as.
They're all fairly similar, Tom.
Well,
So
yeah.
I'm sure I
Uh,
can get it similar enough.
and then for my last one, let's see. The Boston Celtics really don't have a whole lot to play for, so give me OG Anunoby over 14 and a half points on the player prop
Ananobi.
tonight. What?
Ananobi is how
Did
you
I miss
pronounce
an
it.
entire syllable in his name?
I think so.
Ananobi. My apologies
You
to
know
OG
who that is,
Ananobi.
right? Do you know who that is? OG Ananobi?
I'm
Do you
blanking
know
on his
where he played
college
high
team, but
school basketball?
I know he's a former Toronto Raptor. Was he in Missouri?
He played at Jefferson City High School. Now, I just missed him, but he was in that period of me leaving Mizzou, then coming back to Mizzou. But he actually was a former Raptor, and I anchored sports on Sundays at the CBS station in Columbia, Missouri. He's a Jefferson City High School kid, played high school ball at Jeff City. So on Sunday nights where there's less high school stuff, we would run his highlights every Sunday night, and that was like his first couple of years when he was scoring, 6 to 8 points a game, and he was getting like 2 to 3 buckets a game. And the running joke was that we as a TV station showed more OG highlights than anybody else in the world. So I used to have him. He was a regular on my Sunday night sports guest, OG Anunoby. And he wasn't scoring that many points back then. So I used to show all of them. I'll tell you that.
Actually, can I make a switch? Can I go
Fine.
DeAndre Ayton under 24 and a half against
Fine.
Golden State?
Go against DeAndre Ayton under 24 and a half
Under 24 and a half. Yeah, I
tonight.
think if I'm going to go with you on the Warriors side of things. That the Warriors are going to be motivated, they're going to be defending the paint hard. I don't know if Portland's going to be overly interested in doing anything of note. So under 24 and a half seems a lot easier than maybe Boston's not going to play defense and Anunoby gets over 14 and a half. I'm probably going to
Okay.
regret that, but oh well.
All right, that's fine. DeAndre Ayton under 24 and a half versus the Warriors.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of headed to that same game. I have Warriors minus 13 and a half at the Blazers. Golden State trying to move up for the play-in tournament.
Such a big number.
It's a big number, but the Blazers have nothing to play for. Golden State has already been playing great ball lately, winners of 8 of their last 9 games. They just beat the Lakers by 14, who did have something to play for. I think they beat the Blazers by 14 or more. It's going to be a 3-point barrage. You know who's shooting well lately? Klay Thompson. I know a lot of folks have been talking about, Steph is that superstar who doesn't have the co-star. Klay is on the way down. Klay is just more inconsistent because he's older, but he's always been inconsistent because he's a shooter. That's what he is. Well, he's been shooting pretty good of late. So look for Steph, who, by the way, made every 3 attempted, I believe, their last game out. So look for Steph and Klay to both be hot from 3. They'll annihilate the Blazers. Minus 13 and a half. It's a big number, but one I feel good about. Pelicans Kings tonight. over 215.5 points. It's a low point total. I know this is a sort of a playoff game atmosphere, so I know the points go down a little bit in those scenarios, but last time they played, Tom, it was 133 to 100. In fact, all 4 meetings this season for the Pelicans and Kings have gone over 215 and a half points. That's a really low total. I mean, the modern NBA game of pace, of shots, even if there's a little bit more intensity, a little bit more defense, 215 and a half. That's low. Give me the over, baby. Pelicans, Kings.
Provided get at 215 if you want that a little easier.
Oh, even better. I'll stick with 215 and a half.
Oh, that confident.
Oh, yeah. I feel good. I feel good about it. And then I'm going to go on under. One sport that I don't mind betting unders on as much is baseball. I know we talked baseball last week. I know we didn't talk baseball this week. So want to hit a little baseball action tonight. Really thin amount of games tonight for baseball. I was actually considering betting more baseball, given how the last few games of the season are very tricky in the NBA. Who's playing for something, who's not. Why I'm banking on the Warriors. They are playing for something. But Orioles, Red Sox under 8.5 runs tonight. It is very, very early in the year. But you look at the starter for the O's, Rodriguez is 2-0 with a 2.19 ERA. Meanwhile, Whitlock for the Red Sox is 1-0 with the 0.96 ERA. Are either of these guys as good as their numbers so far? No. But in the interim, they look good early. So I look for not many runs here. Orioles, Red Sox under 8.5 runs in tonight's game Thursday night.
Interesting. I was looking at that a little bit. I felt it was like a little too low, but I'm kind of with you on that one.
Yeah.
So for trivia, you mentioned, can you give the criterion again for the coaching question you've got?
Yes. So there's 8 coaches ever to be at one school for at least 15 seasons, have at least 4 Final Fours, and at least 1 national title. So you can have more than that. It's just at least. Coach Cal is one of them, which I think he barely met the criteria for all of them. I think it was 15 years exactly at Kentucky, I believe, 4 Final Fours and 1 national title. So Coach Cal, Calipari is one of them for Kentucky. Can you name the other 7?
The other
I think
7.
there's about 4 or 5 that are really easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1 or 2 that might be a little bit harder. But there's a couple no-brainer. There's one you're going to guess that you're going to be wrong, and he was just so ever close. He missed the winning percentage by literally, it was like 748 or something weird.
Okay, so 750 winning percent. So first one I'm going to go with is Bill Self in Kansas.
Yes, that's one of them.
I'm going to go Tom Izzo, Michigan State.
Not Tom Izzo.
Not Tom Izzo. Okay.
I don't even
So
think
Bill
about that
Self
one.
is a yes. Jay Wright at Villanova. Did they have enough success?
No, not Jay
No,
Wright.
that's 750 because I know they got like multiple Final Fours and all.
They get to 4 though. I'm trying to think. I don't know.
So Coach K.
Coach K. Yep.
Let's see. I'll go with like some old school. So John Wooden at UCLA.
Yep. Those were the 2 no-brainers, I would say.
Dean
Bill
Smith,
Self,
UNC.
Dean Smith is 4. Those are the 4 easiest, I would say.
Yeah.
Not that the others are necessarily. I think you might get them. I feel like there's 1 you're not going to get. Probably 2 that you're going to really struggle with. I think you can maybe reason out another one of them, but he's very old school.
All right. So let's see. Probably based on how you're talking, probably not Roy Williams.
He's the one that was this close.
Gotcha.
He was like literally like 7, 4, 8. Like he was the closest one to being on this list. He missed it because of winning percentage.
Let's see. I know he hasn't been there long enough, so not him. John Thompson at Georgetown, perhaps?
No.
Jim Boeheim, Syracuse.
No.
Really?
He probably doesn't have the winning percentage.
Bobby Knight out of Indiana.
No.
No. Rick Pitino.
Not Rick Pitino. There is a Kentucky coach on here, though. Another one.
Tubby Smith?
Not Tubby Smith. You got to go way back.
Oh, Rupp. I'm blanking on
Adolph
the first.
Rupp.
Thank you.
Yes. So that's the
Okay, that
one.
makes sense.
And then I think these last two are probably the hardest on this list to guess. Although they're both obviously
Hmm.
legends, but one in particular I would. So I'm a sports historian. There's
Hmm.
one on here I would not have gotten, and the other one I might have gotten with clues. But the two I definitely would have got the ones you got already. But the last two are the two hardest, I would say.
So it's probably not going to be right, but I'm going to say Mark Few with Gonzaga.
No national title.
Oh, duh. Yeah, that's of course really important. Gary Williams, Maryland.
No.
Hmm. So now I'm starting to scrape.
So I'll give you a clue for
Hmm.
one of them.
Sure.
This is a school that we now associate with choking in the tournament. But prior to when this guy left, a lot of choking started happening. They didn't choke as much with him. They weren't perennial winners, but they were really good. They did win a championship. Obviously, made 4 Final Fours with him as the coach. Ever since he left, it's a good program that chokes a lot in modern history. They're always good, but since he left, they have not been. I don't think they've been to the Final Four since he left. I would call it a second tier blue blood. I wouldn't say it's like
Hmm.
top tier, but like second tier blue blood. They were a good seed this year in the tournament again, and they choked per usual.
A good seed.
Real good seed, like real good seed.
Not Rick Barnes.
No,
Not Shaka Smart.
it's not an active coach. No,
Well, no, so I'm saying the coach, but I really mean the team. So
yeah,
Marquette. Uh, Bruce Pearl didn't win at Tennessee.
no.
Did he win a title at Tennessee? No, he didn't. Who was at Arizona? Sean Miller, but he never won a title. Iowa State hasn't won a title.
Arizona has won a title, not with that
Oh,
coach.
that's right. Back in like '99 or something like that.
I think it was 97.
'97.
I think they
I'm
were
not going to
also in
get
the
the
Final
name
Four
then.
98.
Oh, hang on. Not Lute Olson.
It's Lute Olson,
There we go. Oh, that's like a Sporkle name from like way back in the past. What's the
right?
last one I'm missing?
Running Rebels. They were a really good team in the
Oh, I know the. I'm not going to remember the name, but as soon as you say it, I'm going to
yeah.
know because I know who you're talking about.
Jerry Tarkanian. I think
Thank you.
hopefully I didn't butcher that there.
Tarkanian. Yeah.
I think I looked that up before, but yeah. That's the one I probably would not have gotten. I probably would have gotten Lute Olson, but I probably would have needed clues. The other
Yeah.
guys, I think I would have probably ran off right away. But yeah. So Coach Cal, part of Elite Company again. I know we
Hmm.
talked about it plenty earlier. Could be a little bit better in-game coach sometimes, but the recruiting, the leadership of men, he is a really, really good coach. And I know he has been, even though they're vacated, he has been cleared of all wrongdoing. We never know what is out there, but even with his recruiting, there's a sort of kind of jealousy, I guess. As
Mm.
I'll talk about it in my statement of the week. I'll try to keep it a little
Yeah.
bit brief because I
Kind of
already
revolutionized.
kind of already did the statement already. But I'll let you talk first for your statement.
Yeah, well, my statement of the week is this isn't a new phenomenon, but we have to address that baseball does have a pitching problem. This is something that we've been seeing this season with a lot of big names undergoing UCL, more commonly known as the Tommy John surgery. And this is something where we're kind of, some folks are correlating that this is a pitching clock issue. But as Clinton Yates said, people are probably panicking at the wrong disco. That's just such a great line. I had to throw
I
that in
think I
there.
saw one of the pitchers talked
Hmm.
about this, and you're probably headed the
Yeah,
same way I was going
Verlander.
to
Yeah,
say.
Verlander. I think was the Justin Verlander was the one who was talking about it, and basically it's that with the rise of kind of like single sport athletes, with the focus on
This is a
getting the
bit different.
maximum velocity,
Mm-hmm.
the maximum spin rate on the ball, that pitching in general, at least for baseball pitching, softball pitching, very, very different. pitching in baseball, that's not really how our arms are physiologically supposed to move. And of course, we marvel at the outliers, the Nolan Ryans, the Randy Johnsons, the guys that are able to throw super hard for a super long period of time, and in an effort to kind of make every pitcher like that, because it is a clear advantage, we are seeing really a large spate of these massive injuries in baseball in pitching, and it's really kind of a shame, especially as we aren't even necessarily seeing it at the pro level. I mean, you look at scouting reports for baseball guys coming out of high school, coming out of college, and they've already had a Tommy John operation, almost like preemptively in some cases, or they've already suffered this injury. It's just a shame that baseball, it kind of feels more than any other sport, is kind of eating itself up with its own progress. I mean, you look at basketball, the game has changed where the three-point shot is more vital now than it ever has been, is more prevalent than it ever has been. But that's not really to the detriment of the game itself. Football has made some changes where it's more scoring, more passing, and we're not really seeing a negative impact as far as injury goes there, specifically related to that. But for baseball, it's all about high velocity on your pitches, high spin rate on your pitches, the three true outcomes as far as strikeout, walk, or home run. Base hits aren't as valued, stolen bases aren't as valued, and really are only making a comeback because the bases are larger. It makes it easier to steal. Just baseball, more than other sports, somehow, some way, has turned the optimization into a worse product on the field of play. So I don't know what the answer is, because you can't really legislate don't throw as hard. But there absolutely, I think, can be some competitive advantage for teams that decide to emphasize, and quite frankly, athletes that decide to emphasize actually learning how to pitch, not necessarily going for maximum speed, maximum velocity. It's what's going to get you picked up. I don't know if that's ever going to change, but certainly you can have a successful career simply by being available, the greatest ability that is there in sports.
Mark
Yeah, like
Burley.
I think he maxed out at like 94, 95 in his career, but
He was more like 92, 93.
yeah, like that's where he sat pretty comfortably. He could touch a little bit higher, but like Justin Verlander is famous for, yeah, he could hit 97, 98 if he wanted to, but he typically wasn't doing that until like sixth, seventh inning, when he's like really worked in, really limbered up and able to do that.
Yeah, and Verlander is one of the three best pitchers of this generation. I mean, him,
Mhm.
Scherzer, and Kershaw. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
real quick on that, and I don't want to misquote it. I think I know who it was, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to attribute something to someone on the air that I don't want to wrongfully say it was him. But it was one of the elite pitchers in baseball. It was not Verlander, because a lot of people are blaming the pitch clock on this. But the evidence that baseball has supposedly is not the pitch clock. He actually said it wasn't the pitch clock.
Hmm.
He says the injuries are happening because of the substances baseball is cracking down on,
That too.
the rosin and all those other substances. And he said that he went into a start without any substances, and he threw as good as he normally does. But then his arm felt it, his shoulder felt it the next day. So he's saying that he's mostly using the substances for grip, and so he doesn't have to struggle as much to throw the ball so hard. Not as much so much for actually doing anything crazy on the pitches. It's more for
Hmm.
his sort of like effort to
Yeah,
throw it.
which
I
actually is
don't.
also
Do you know who it
something.
was that said that? I saw a video
Tyler
on Twitter.
Glasnow.
I was right. That's who I thought
Yeah.
it was. I thought it was Tyler Glasnow,
Hmm.
but I did not want to attribute it to the wrong pitcher. But
Yeah.
he said that's the reason for the injuries, Tom. So
Yeah,
something to
and that
keep in
also is
mind.
like, I know folks would be like, "Oh, that puts the hitters at a bit of a disadvantage." Let me tell you, like the reason I didn't play baseball is I was afraid of getting hit by the ball. I think these hitters don't mind if the pitchers have a little something to help them aim it a bit better. Nobody likes getting plumped, so I think that
Right.
it's that there's a line to walk as far as you want to use a little sunscreen, a little rosin, go for it. Like, oh, pine tar. That's where we're starting to get into some different conversations here. But really, what baseball ought to do in that case, just make one standard product that everybody can use. It's perfectly legal to use it, and you move on. In fact, That's how you can make some money. You market that for youth league teams at a certain point. Like there's big league chew bubble gum. Make, like little stickies or whatever. I don't know.
You're
I'm not in charge of
almost
marketing.
making too much sense. But anyway, that was the thing that Tyler Glasnow talked
Yeah.
about. Now you talk about something to be said about a pro knowing it. That part of the game, the pros know best. I mean, they know the grip rates, they know that stuff.
Hmm.
I was never, I mean, well, I was a little league pitcher in fourth grade and I was very wild. I was never a pitcher even in the later years of middle school. So I can't comment on pitching. When I pitched, Tom, I thought the curveball looked cool. I used to like loop it that way. No one even taught me how to grip it. That's how much I knew about pitching. In my changeup, I would
Hmm.
throw it, my fastball and my changeup the same way. I would just try to throw it slower for my changeup when I was in fourth grade. And then a couple years later, I actually had a good coach who was teaching people how to actually throw the ball. I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. But anyway, I was never a pitcher, so I don't know enough about
Yeah.
that stuff personally. Already hit on this earlier. I don't want to get too heated and beyond for another 30 minutes talking about this because I could probably dedicate an hour. I already did the statement earlier, but
Hmm.
I think that there has to be a sort of the legends in sports, and this goes for the men's game too. You know, let's not be so disrespectful to the current players. This game that you cherish, obviously Cheryl Swoops has said that Caitlin Clark only got the scoring record because she played 5 years. Well, guess what, Cheryl? Fact check yourself. She played 4. Dana Taurasi has been kind of like basically making comments of, yeah, she's not that good. I never got to do that back in my day. Not that she's not that good, but she's not as good as she seems to be. Paige Beckers is better. He's a UConn person. Like, let's respect Caitlin Clark for what she did. Lynette Woodard was, in my opinion, one of the worst in that she said, Clark doesn't have the scoring record. I have it. After Iowa rolled out the red carpet for her and honored her and Caitlin Clark together, got a standing ovation. Then the Final Four weekend, she picks that to be the stage where she makes a speech and says,
Hmm.
I'm still the scoring leader because I didn't have a 3-point line. I mean, NBA didn't have a 3-point line either. That's just how it is. She's got the most points. Live with it, Lynette. Respect Caitlin Clark for what she's done. Brianna Stewart says she doesn't have to have a champion. She has to have a championship to be the GOAT. Well, guess what? You played with a bunch of other all-stars. You can have 4 titles all you want, but you're never going to get the amount of points or the amount of assists as Caitlin Clark. You'll never get the amount of awards she had, and you'll never be known for a better career than her in college. Live with it. Let's help grow the game. Let's empower her. Let's empower women's basketball. If you want to talk about it's not just Caitlin Clark, say Caitlin Clark is great. She's doing a lot for our game. We got these other stars also doing it in our league. I'm doing it. So and so is doing it. This person's doing it in college. Taurasi, Beckers. You can use that platform and say Caitlin Clark is great. We love what she's doing. You can use better language of she's one of the all-time greats. I don't want to pick one. She's definitely up there. You have other ways of getting your point across by instead of just ridiculing her or saying that, discrediting what she's done. And I think this goes for the men's game as well. We see a lot of these former players, Pippen, Jordan, Charles Barkley, Shaq. They put together their all-time lists and they pick guys from their era. This happens in all the sports. LeBron James is not the 8th best player in basketball history. He's not the 9th best player. He's not the 7th best player. He is clearly top 3 or 4 all time. You want to put Michael Jordan as your GOAT? Go ahead. It's Michael Jordan. I can have an argument there. But if you have a list that puts LeBron James as your 7th, as your 8th, as your 9th best player ever, you are simply delusional. And I think a lot of these people need to live in this world of let's empower our current superstars. Let's lift them up. If you don't have anything nice to say about them, don't say anything nice at all. Then don't say anything at all, rather, Tom. So I think a lot of these legends can kind of recognize the way the game is growing and recognize that there's other greats out there. So instead of tearing them down, let's bring them up, especially prevalent in women's sports, because women's sports is something that, you know, we want to grow. The sports are better if women are playing sports. There's so many girls that, get shattered for playing sports. And let's not set the example when we do have a megastar like Caitlin Clark. Let's appreciate her for all she's done instead of trying to tear her down. You want to show her that you're better? Do it on the court. Not on the mic, not in the press, not on social media. Do it on the court, Tom. Be like Messi. He does this talking on the field. They ask him who's the GOAT. He's like, that's for you guys to decide. I'm just honored to be considered among the GOATs. Very few of us can do what Messi does, what Barry Sanders did. Be truly humble. Let the others make those decisions themselves. Let them have their chatter, but respect the game. Respect the current stars. Just like we tell the current stars to respect the legends, well, the legends ought to be respecting the current stars. So that's about as short as it can go. I think it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts, Tom. Just come on. Caitlin Clark has received way too much hate. And for not from, I mean, it's from men too, but you would think a lot of the hate is from men. It's from women. Women are hating on her. Tough. So anyway, that'll do it for the show, Tom. Plenty of great chatter in the weeks to come. We got the NBA playoffs, the NFL draft, a lot of great sports discussions to be had in the weeks to come. Thank you to you for co-hosting, doing a great job with me. Thank you so much to our listeners, our viewers. You guys are the best. We'll be back soon. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.